its prime. We may be forged from the love of liberty, but somebody could write a better item for we. Listen, the national anthem should reflect a nation's people. When it plays, we all must feel passion and pride. Nobody walking around, nobody sitting. Patriotism must rise up like high tide. Like a national call to war, it should raise everybody's pause and unite every living soul under one common cause. It's not too late for revision. Given all that I have outlined, we change the Trinity Cross, the anthem could redesign. Tell me now.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to Eye on Dependency, right here on I-95.5 FM, live on the Independency Facebook page and YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining us as usual. Courtesy the Ministry of National Security and Counter-Trafficking Unit, we present to you another event, another historical event that took place in our country, Trinidad and Tobago, the 1970 revolution. This is a very historic part of our journey as a nation. And for those of you who are not acquainted with our history, you'll have a chance this morning to learn about it, especially young servicemen of the Defense Force, men and women of the Defense Force. This is your inheritance. I wonder if some of you know the shoulders that you walk on or stand on, the path that was laid out for you, the blood, sweat, and tears that was shed for you to be wearing the kit or the uniform of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, Regiment, Air Guard, and Reserves. Do you? Well, for those of you who, especially those of you who just enlisted, then this is your time to understand this journey, understand where you are now, and what you can do to prevent it. This happened, it really happened, and you need to know about it if you didn't know. This morning, Natasha and I have prepared a journey for you that will encapsulate and touch, listen to people who were actually there on that day. So Natasha, they'll hear from today.
They will hear from, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us on I-95.5 FM and Facebook and YouTube live stream. So you'll be hearing from several officers who, as Garth mentioned, were there at the time. Ramnath C, Brown F, Modest G, Jones L, Crow L, Shah R, Salandi W, Kelshal R. And to wrap it all up, we'll have a parade of sorts of all of the persons that we interviewed for this series that we did back in 2020, and including some of the non-serving families who lost loved ones during this event.
Today is the 21st of April, and this happened on the day.
On the day.
How many years ago?
54 years ago.
54 years ago. Next year will be 55 years, right? Obviously. But this is just to push home, and it so happened my batch's anniversary is this month as well. 14th of April 1982, I enlisted in the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment alongside a number of youngsters who went on to serve their country. And we too were proud. Some of us weren't perfect, but we were actually proud and we wore that kit with pride. Never disrespected it and cherished it, because those whose command we were under were very, very serious about that. They did not play where that was concerned. Discipline, deportment, you name it, we learned it, and which some of us still use to this day. So, according to Commander David Bloom, and I'll just give you his take from a letter he wrote to the Trinidad Express. I'll explain that. Now, Commander Bloom, you would hear from Admiral Kelel the role that he played in quelling this mutiny. And in the 1970 mutiny at Tetron Barracks, according to Commander David Bloom, this is the man who stopped the rebels' convoy. And according to him, many of the versions of the happenings of 1970, when a section of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment mutinied, have been full of half-truths and innuendos, says David Bloom, former commanding officer of the Coast Guard. In a letter to the Sunday Express dated 6th April 1986, in which he broke a 16-year silence on this event, Bloom gave his account contradicting all versions of what happened after a state of emergency was declared on 21st April 1970, and there was a mutiny in the Trinidad in the regiment at Tetron Barracks. And Bloom's letter read like this: I read with interest your interview with Commodore Williams in the Sunday supplement of your newspaper dated the 9th February 1986. As the Commodore quite rightly says, there have been many versions concerning the happenings of April 1970, with unfortunately the majority of them full of half-truths and innuendos, mostly at the expense of myself and other members of the Coast Guard. I have over the last 16 years maintained a complete silence on the events over that period in order to honor a verbal undertaking made in May 1970 by myself to the then Prime Minister, Dr. Eric Williams. I still intend to honor that agreement, but I think at this stage I can be forgiven for the following general remarks. I was at Stobles Bay from 5 a.m. on 21st April 1970, and in view of the soon-to-be-declared state of emergency, held an officers' meeting from 5:30 a.m. at which all available officers were present. I remained at Stobles or on one of the Coast Guard vessels during the entire emergency period, with exception of 2 or 3 visits to Port of Spain for meetings, usually at the Prime Minister's official residence. The first report of the revolt was made to me briefly on the telephone by then Major Henry Christopher, and a little later verbally substantiated by leading Seaman Griffith, one of my men who was attending sick parade at Tetron Barracks and who escaped on foot over the hill to Stobles Bay. This information was immediately relayed by me to the Prime Minister in Port of Spain via the Commissioner of Police, Tony May. And as a result, certain general instructions were sent back to me. As a result of this, I issued certain precise orders, but because of the general uncertainty that existed at the time, some of these had necessarily been of a general nature. This situation lasted throughout the entire emergency period, and it is to be everlasting credit that 99% of these orders were obeyed without question, and in some cases were improved on by the suggestions of the officers and men under my command. During the whole period, I was in telephone and radio contact and had the full support and cooperation of the Commissioner of Police, his men, certain units of the regiment, Coast Guard Auxiliary, and many others. The Commissioner of Police in turn kept the Prime Minister fully informed of our conversations, and it was in company and later with Brigadier Surratt and others that I was present at 2 or 3 meetings with the Prime Minister's residence. And certainly at the time, both myself and others, I suspect, were unaware and never informed that there was any other avenue of communication between the Prime Minister and Stobles Bay. In the People interview, however, Commodore Williams said there was regular communication between himself and the then Prime Minister on events at Tetron. Lieutenant Commander Goldstraw kept me fully informed of his handling of the arrival of the Venezuelan warships. I was informed directly from Port of Spain of the second arrival of the Venezuelan warships, having initially seen the vessels in the Gulf of Paria and, again as a result of directed instructions, boarded the Venezuelan command ship in Port of Spain harbor from a Coast Guard vessel accompanied by Lieutenant Brash. The other Coast Guard vessel commanded by Commander Goldstraw was also in attendance after a fairly short and friendly discussion between myself, accompanied by a Venezuelan consular official, and the commander of the Venezuelan squadron. The ships turned away. I was not called upon to give evidence at the subsequent court-martial, and in the view of the previous mentioned undertaking, I have been reluctant to put pen to paper, but feel that late Dr. Williams would understand this attempt in merely general terms to clear up the question of my movements and actions during the period. Bloom said, "It is interesting to note, however, that there was a committee which met at the Chaguaramas Convention Center from the 28th April to the 1st May 1970, headed by Major Roderick Macano, supported by Captain Louis Legendre, Mr. Claude Drayton, and Mr. Louis Rees, which was set up by and had to report back to the Prime Minister on the whole issue, and all the key officers and men concerned, including myself, gave evidence while events were still fresh in our minds. The findings of which, after all this time, may still be available for anyone interested in a blow-by-blow commentary. And this was an article courtesy the Trinidad Express Newspaper Limited. So, folks, that was, in the words of Commander Bloom, the first time we shared it with you. And
the book you're reading from?
I'm sorry. Yes, so the book I'm reading from is The Reflections of a Soldier, a memoir of 1970 and events before and after. And this book was loaned to me by, I think it was Garnet Moore. This was written by Mr. Clement Burkitt, ex-soldier, Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, from 1966 to 72. So, there you have it, folks. That's in the words of Commander Bloom. So now let's get into this version, these versions of this event,
Yes.
and hear from the men. Again, you're going to hear from retired RSM Ramnath, and then Franklin Brown, retired RSM Modest, retired Staff Sergeant Lou Jones, and retired, I think Crow is deceased now, Crow L. Private Crow L. Right? So, no, Crow is still around. So let's go to this break, folks, and when we return, get your chips, popcorn, tea, whatever. Sit back, let's take this journey through the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And for those of you who want your memory refreshed or who didn't know of these events, you're going to hear it here this morning. Stay right there. We'll be back.
My advice for kids, for young people who are using these products, If you haven't started, please don't try, please don't start. There's a tremendous amount of curiosity about them, but we can't tell you if you're the kid who's going to become hooked after your first few puffs. For kids who've already started to use these products, it's a great idea to try to get yourself off of them. And there's many ways to do that. There's actually a new text-based program that's called This Is Quitting that is put out by the Truth Initiative, and that's a program that's available for free. It is a social media-based program. People could use it to try to help themselves get off of these products. If you are having difficulty getting off of them all by yourself, you can reach out to your physician, see if they can help you with nicotine replacement therapy, which may be of help for people who have serious addictions and are having trouble getting off of them.
Hey, Cappy, talk to you now, boy. I got a small work for you to do. Make a quick 10 G's. What you gonna do for me?
10 G's? What's that I'm do there, boy?
What you doing? Taking your boat, run up the islands, pick up some people and then bring them back here for me. That's all you have to do.
That sound like human trafficking, boy. That's a serious crime. I can't make that.
Trafficking in human beings is a serious violation of a person's human rights. It violates a person's right to freedom of movement, freedom of choice, freedom of speech, and freedom of identity. It is a heinous crime which affects local, regional, and international peace and security. A victim of human trafficking is subjected to many types of abuse. The crime destroys a person's dignity and self-worth. Victims often feel hopeless, are suicidal, and are stigmatized in their communities. Child victims are deprived of their rights to education, play, and social interactions. They're essentially robbed of their childhood, and that can never be regained once those years have passed. If we do little or nothing to fight against human trafficking in our country, we can face economic sanctions from international agencies and partners. Our country will be losing money. Doing little or nothing to fight against human trafficking will tarnish our country's international image and, most of all, the value we place on human life. Human trafficking is no respecter of persons. Anyone can be a victim. So let us all strive to safeguard human life and dignity in Trinidad and Tobago.
We are the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on 95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Mutiny, don't put the army. Think again, hypocrisy. To them we owe our liberty. We should build a monument for the heroes of the regiment.
RSM Ramnath, 3588, retired at W1. Well, when I joined the 1st of January 1969, it took me some time to observe that people who were in charge of me, as a Trinidadian, I was a little stunned because the people in charge of me were people from the islands. Because remember, we invited the islanders to come down here, right, to be part of the regiment. And one of the things that really shocked me is that most of the people in charge of me were from outside of the island.
What was the mood that you observed and that you felt that led up to 1970?
What led up to this is a culmination of dissatisfaction. People were dissatisfied in different ways. Like for instance, when the army was formed down here, most of the people who came in were people from cadet, customs, and police, and old soldiers, from the old army. So those were the people who formed the corps, right? And one of the things that I pick up, there were browsers in the officer corps about the short service commission officers, right? They came in here for a short period, and the officers in training standards were to come back and actually graduate people. That didn't happen as probably they expected, So that was a big growth. One of the biggest signals of something coming was a refusal to have lunch, a luncheon in December of 1969. All the soldiers refused to eat that lunch. So that was a sure signal that things were not good at all. That is the annual Christmas luncheon. All the soldiers and everybody protested, they didn't eat. While this thing was happening in Tetron, where there was a lot of dissatisfaction taking place, it came a time when the officers at the time, right, started to be sympathetic, and they link up with the Black Power movement. Lassa, Rizan, and Bazi. Remember also, there are some incidents on that time where a private at the time was Makano, is deceased now, right? He ran down a Samuel, a cutlass. Then you have an incident where a soldier named Jurity shot at Captain Bullen. Shot through the hat, the capsule there, went through there. A good thing wasn't a good shot. There are a lot of absentees used to be taking place. I was in a company, Charlie Company. Samuel was deceased, Samuel Leons, right? And he was a strict disciplinarian and had problems with himself and the platoon commanders with Shah. They had the authority to issue a pass. But when they gave a pass, they just used to leave one mark out and go. But for the sake of administration, the company Samuel was supposed to back the passes, and they used to have a fight going on with that. Then they had situations where on Muster Parade, they were protesting, right? They used to have a red band on the tire, red band on the head, go there. There were a lot of series of insubordination. So his discipline was being broken down.
Who was the commanding officer at the time of the regiment?
Colonel Johnson.
What were the signals being sent that something was about to go down in the barracks?
The sergeants and all held a meeting with the commanding officer, right, outlining what was taking place. And I understand he replied and remarked to them that not my officers, because they complaining about what was going on with the officers, some of the behavior of some of the officers, right? There was an incident where I was on a physical training course, and I came down to Tetron one evening, and I was going up to the barrack room upstairs, the barrack room by the square, and when I entered, I saw the officers and the men doing talk. So I did the normal thing and paid compliments, and Lassell told me, say, I'm not ready for that. So that told me something right away. There was a signal, I already saw something was wrong. And when I went into the barrack room, I went in there with a lot of marijuana, smoking and all this kind of thing. So when 70 happened, the next day, I was out of camp, right? And when we came back in, they just took us, got uniform, it was in civilian clothes, right? Issue a weapon, we have the main gate in Charamas. Alpha Company was there, because they were the company that was doing duties at Camp Ogden. They were the first to come down, the Alpha Company. And I joined a platoon under Lieutenant Derrick. I was stationed at Tembladora. There was a building there, and we had occupied that under Lieutenant Derrick. And I remember a night, Brigadier Cell got the assignment to come to see people quell this disturbance, right? And I remember a night when we were there, he came and he gave us an assignment to go down to Tetron Barracks and to flush those guys out. And there was a lot of growls and things, and then say, we weren't so here, you know what I mean? And very highly defensive position, And then it was called off. You didn't have to go to my room. And then after that, while all that was happening, Tetron Barrack, we were doing duties outside. We were out in the fields. We used to have patrols going out in the northern range. We used to leave 96 hours patrols under platoon sergeants, men like Sergeant Paul, Sergeant Thomas, Saki Thomas. We had officers like Lieutenant Alfonso at the time, Lieutenant Salandi. They were platoon commanders. We had two sets of duties those times. We had foot patrols and we had OPs, observation posts, in various places, even Blanchishes, even as far as Matlock, Paria Bay. We were pursuing those guys on there because they were there. As a matter of fact, there was an officer, Major Goddard, he was the man in charge of the operations at the time, and he used to be in the cookhouse called No Touching Bags, and he used to see the famous thing, the cat is in the bag, meaning he has some information, you know what I mean? And know where they are, the movement, and then we used to go in pursuit. Yeah, I remember on a patrol, I'll never forget it, with a corporal called his deceased now Campbell. We were doing patrol in Jericho Heights, and we encountered a guy there who was in a bank robbery. His name is Bonnie Gransol. He and his brother he's a bank robbery. They robbed Barclays Bank in Tradwick Road. His brother got killed, and he was out there. I remember him well because I remember I was in charge of him, right? He put him under my charge when he caught him. And I remember he had a big knapsack on top of his back with him. He had a sawed-off shotgun. Had on boots and denims, and he had this knapsack was filled with crisp, brand new notes, $100 bill. That's from the road. And I remember asking him, why he get involved in this thing, you know? And then those days we had a couple of policemen with us. That was for the powers of RSM, you know? And I remember when I was asking him then, he said the pigs killed my brother. And the police and them say, "Coffee, move there," was a corporal, right? And they come there up to kill him. And I said, well, no, not under my watch. Those days, we had some grueling times, soldiers used to be working very hard, hardly any time for home. They only pass home sometimes, see the family and move. As a matter of fact, it was so grueling at them times that we got into a lot of accidents, driving, going up to Toko, and you hear a tire blow out. As a matter of fact, there was a terrible accident of the soldiers got killed.
So that was WO1 retired Carlton Ramnath telling his account of what happened before, the grouses that were, the rumblings that were happening among the leadership in the regiment at the time, and what was required of the soldiers who were still around after when the freedom fighters and they were, I don't want to say running amok, but were given trouble. And the soldiers were called into action and served well, along with police, I assume, to round up these rebels.
Right, so we move to Tetron Barracks now, and you'll hear from Private Brown at the time, who reported sick that morning, and that is when it started to unfold. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we are taking a walk through history, and this time 1970. So let's go now to Franklin Brown, who saw, and this is what he saw.
Yeah, my name is Franklin Brown. I joined the Army the 2nd of May 1968, Regiment number 3496, and I was present in 1970 at the time of the first uprising, which took place amid a state of emergency, and all soldiers were told to draw their weapons in readiness so that if there is any sort of trouble outside, we can go and deal with it.
What, in your recollection, was the government to call a state of emergency?
Well, the state of emergency was called because of the Black Power movement. It's because of the climate at the time. And the government believed the only way of maintaining law and order is by calling a state of emergency. And it's purely because of the Black Power movement. And that's in my opinion.
Right. Now, what were some of the things that were taking place in the country? You spoke about the atmosphere. What was the atmosphere like? There must be a series of events that took place that led the government to say, look, it's time to call a state of emergency.
I am not in a position to comment further on that because I was only a 19-year-old soldier at the time. And therefore, in those days, we spent all our lives inside the army itself. And now and again you go out, but most of the time, we as a young soldier, we used to stay in barracks and so on. There's a lot was happening outside, which I am unable to comment at that time. All I could tell you is that a state of emergency was called, and we were told it because of the political climate at that time.
Where were you stationed at the time?
Well, I was at Tetron Barracks, and on that particular morning, I didn't have any weapon because I reported sick. You can't go and see a doctor with a rifle. So I reported sick that morning, and as I was sitting down waiting to see the doctor, I just heard a shot went off. I paid it no mind. Then a second shot went off again. And then I went outside and I looked up at the ammunition bunker. A Land Rover approached, an officer came out from that Land Rover with his hands in the air. And I was amazed to see that. I thought this was a Western or something. So then I heard a few more shots going off, and one person shouted, "All you run for the revolution." That is when it started. He said, "Run for the revolution." I forget all about my sickness, yes? I run down to the armory to draw my weapon, and I just went in there and I drew my weapon as everyone else. And then everybody was sort of gathering together. All the officers from sergeants up were locked up in the cells, and we were told we need to march all the officers. We rounded up all the officers from sergeant upward. Then we were told to go and get mattresses and so on, because the cells there didn't need to accommodate as many people as that. And that is what my main involvement was.
Who was giving these orders? There must have been somebody in charge.
But Charles Lassalle were the ones giving down all the orders. And therefore, whatever is being communicated to us will have come directly from them.
Right.
Because they got other people underneath them, corporals and so on, who would say, you have to do this and so on. And then they ask everyone to sort of get on the vehicles, load up the vehicles, and we're going outside. But they didn't tell us where we were going. They only knew where they were going, but we didn't.
No, you said the sergeants and the officers were
locked up.
They were under house arrest?
They were put in detention. Okay. In the detention cells where the private soldiers now normally get locked up.
Guard room?
Yes, in the guard room. Mm-hmm. But the guard room was not that big. It didn't make to accommodate all these sergeants and warrant officers, but they were all put in there. So it was very uncomfortable. And I remember, I think it was Major Goddard saying that he had a bad heart or something like that. But people weren't studying that. All they were interested in, they wanted to get these people out of the way because they were not involved, if you like. So therefore, it would be a hindrance to have these people out if you're trying to do something. And I remember when I went down by Major Christopher, by the commanding officer's office, I heard the commanding officer shouting for help because some people were holding him down. But obviously I'm not going to get involved, so I just left that as it is. And he was eventually arrested as well. And then we were all told to go on vehicles and turn your berries inside out. That was the instruction. And as a young soldier, I only followed instruction because I remember they asked the commanding officer driver to do some driving as well. And he refused to. And they pointed a rifle at him and said, quick march. And they march him and they lock you up too. So therefore, under these conditions, you would just follow in orders. And then we mounted the vehicle, all weapons and so on, as much weapons as we can. But who knows where we were going? It's only after the event, what the plan was to go to and arrest the Prime Minister. That is what the original plan was.
Now, you were asked to turn your berries inside out.
That's correct.
The color of the regiment berry is green.
Right.
So it means now you will have had blackberries.
Exactly. Because that represents black power, isn't it?
Right.
We mounted up all the trucks. No more than about 4 trucks. And Captain Spencer, he escaped. He's the only officer that escaped. And he went to the Coast Guard. And if he is the one who gave the Coast Guard the instructions, because the Coast Guard wouldn't have known anything, Captain Spencer escaped. So he left the bus and ran up to the Coast Guard, because getting from the Coast Guard to us is not far, as you know.
Right.
You know, from Tetron Barracks. So he escaped. And then we were going out. And then they started to shell the hills. They weren't aiming at the vehicles. They were aiming at the mountains to let all the rubble come down on the street itself to stop the vehicles from coming out. They weren't aiming at us. But Bailey was a bugler. That is how he died, because the shell from one of the ammunition hit him. And as far as my recollection goes, he was the only person who died. And then we went back in the barrack and we were in there for days because we couldn't go anywhere. And then a few guys said, well, let's head for the mountains. And a few guys escaped over the mountains. I didn't have any breakfast that morning, so my good friend, who we always stick together, said, let's go. I said, not me. I didn't have any breakfast that morning, so I'm not going to be climbing that big mountain over Grand. You know that big mountain from Tetron? You can climb that and go all the way out.
Now, this is where reality would have, I'm sure, would have stepped in. When the Coast Guard shelled the hills, of course, they blocked the road.
Right.
So you all had to now beat a hasty retreat and get back.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
What was the mood of the leader of the insurgents, between Rafid Shah and LaSalle? What were their mood and what were instructions that they gave you all?
Well, they had a change plan. All we would do it is sort of every man for themselves in terms of organizing their food and so on. People went and raid all the stores and the cookouts and everything because obviously there's nobody to cook for you this time and so on. So you have to grab as much as you can and keep yourself going. But we weren't under any specific instruction apart from make sure we guard the base itself and do allow any people to come in, because an helicopter came across trying to take pictures or whatever it is, and people were shooting at the helicopter and it went away. But apart from that, we were hemmed in there. And as far as I understood it, what brought this whole thing to an end is when they called back Seret. Seret wasn't in the army anymore, he resigned. But they called back Seret to act as a go-between, to do the negotiation between Shah and LaSalle. And Seret is the one who brought this whole thing to an end, really, because of the negotiations. Must be the government appointed him, because he couldn't just come on his own, because he had nothing to do with the army anymore, because he had retired.
Comparing 1970, are you picturing or sensing the same atmosphere?
No, I think it's totally different times now. And therefore, it's not going to happen today, because the army then were all concentrated in one place, isn't it? You had a few people up camp on then and so on and so forth. But right now, it is a bit more spread out. So therefore, what happened then ain't going to happen again. It is as simple as that.
All right, so that was retired Franklin Brown. He's a musician now, part-time musician. He comes home for every carnival. He lives in the UK now, and that's Bonnie B's and Trinidad Rio's brother. That very talented family.
Indeed.
Remember Benjai and all of these?
Yes, related.
Right. Yeah, all of them are related. Kelly Brown, another fantastic trumpeter. That's their brother too. So it's a large family, just like the Bonaparte family. So that was him. So let's go to Modest now. Let's hear what the old man had to say. What was his experience? Of course, he was a young soldier back then. Let's hear what he had to say. You're listening to Our Dependency. Thank you for joining us on Facebook and YouTube. And we'll have discussions after. Let's go. Sure.
The rank was W1, retired RSM. Tell what Modest.
What can you tell us about 1970? What was the experience like for you?
Well, in 1970, I was a private. I've been enlisted in 64. So, in the build up to that was the Black Power movement, Black consciousness that had come to the fore. It said as the river. So, as far as I was concerned as a soldier at that time, we had a lot of confinement building up to that because of course, the activities, marching and all this kind of thing. The one of 24 scientists. When I was always at some back, I was a storming company. In those days, they used to have General Stormer and Army Stormer. They used to have two stormers on duty now. The talk came out that they were to have a state of emergency and all the officers have been checking up on the companies, the platoons and this kind of thing now. So it was pretty busy. During that time too, they had more vigilance on like stores and everything, everybody getting the things together in case we had to move out. And then the word came down that some soldiers take the bunker, they would have ammunition and all this kind of thing. So it started in that kind of thing.
Were you all aware that Shah and LaSalle were part of this movement too?
I am not sure whether the involvement from being part of the Black, that might have been part of it, as far as I realized after. But they had their own misgivings as far as from the disappointment. Remember, they had officers seconded who would have to make way for them young guys to come from San Jose, something like Shah and LaSalle and all that fellows. Because when LaSalle wrecked down the bachelor, when they came down, they might have a little disappointment from that side. They might have a little input with the Black Power thing too. But that was a kind of island-wide something, They come down as second lieutenant. Rex was in my company, Alpha. And Raf was down in San Fernando at that. But they were close. They can attack. They're like, brother. So when they took over the bunker.
Who led that exercise, taking over the bunker?
Well, it was a bit of private, 3 or 4 private. They took the bunker. So confusion started to reign there a little bit. They cut down by the stores. They kind of took what they want. And I was there when now this is Warren Jeffrey. Well, at that time. He was at that time. He was a DQ.
The first salvo from the Coast Guard, they came wrong by the seafront.
Right by the seafront. I will only to dive off the pier one day there, that area there. So they were flying across the square over the Banum like to try to get at the bunker.
Bunker, right.
It's on down they go to realize that the elevation of a gun barrel and with the buildings, they can't get at the bunker like that. So it's not to say that they were trying at Paracombe and not that they were trying to blow the bunker. But by that time, everybody had ammo and all kind of things. Yeah, because they had to return themselves. But they were firing and soldiers panicking. Some of them came out and went to the boat. So they couldn't get at the bunker. And they said, well, it's better they evacuate the Trondheim. So a lot of right how the majority of the fellas went on the truck. But when we were going over the hill, up by Closeness, and we started to go towards Media, the boats come around and started to fire again. I don't know if they were firing direct, but as I said, the angle wasn't conducive to hit the vehicle. So I don't know if they were trying to hit the vehicle or trying to hit the hill to bring down the hill to make the way impassable. So after the time, we came out the truck and were taking cover now. So at that point in time, that a ricochet hit Bailey on the helmet. I was right there. Then I remember they wanted to fire on the boat because they were within range of the mortars. We had mortars. And I remember they went to load the mortar, 81. Gordon, they do fire at the coast. They got a lot of fire at the coast. Under that amount of firing, we had to withdraw. We went back into Texas. While we were down there, a plane flying low, and it was fired upon. I know that because I saw 2-3 black puff of smoke come outside. I just went. Sometime during that period, I remember Mao Open he came down there. And just started to, they called back, just started to come down to talk. And he came down and he talked to them. After that time now, they started to arrest people or detain them. That is when they went to Cha and La Salle. Because the talk had come around that they had soldiers by the gate preparing to invade the front part. I don't know how that would have worked out because I had met back and my friends and them in Auckland. Some fellas had their relatives and things. So I don't know how that would have worked out because in any case, if they had to country run over to Trump, people had to defend themselves. However, thankfully, that didn't work out. I think they gave the soldiers police shoots and all kind of things. I wouldn't know about that. But I know it happened that the soldiers burned the police shoot and things because they wanted them to differentiate them from us, young and Texan. Because they say we were rebels, which was quite true in my opinion.
Who arrested the men?
But the boss is to come down and they carry out. And this arrest went on for a couple of days. I remember even at that time when this is Colonel Theodore came down from Jamaica, he was there. And they have us doing PT and things now, you know. I remember playing football on the sports field at the bus game. And the only two people who remained on the sports field when the bus left was I and Lanford. They presented everybody. When everybody was taken, they formed the HQ on the base. Where you saw the TKI up there, that unit was formed about that time. It ended up now with 20 patrols. Full force. So when you go out, sometimes when you go 3-4 days, you walk in the mountain because they would have who they wanted already, who was for trial and all kind of things.
They were looking for who with the patrol?
Based on the Black Power movement, fellas like Guy Harewood and Lennox Daniel and all them fellas came out. Those are the guys we were looking for. There was the National Union of Freedom Fighters, so we had to do patrols trying to get those fellas. That is when the army started to work really with the police. I would say from 1970-71, that is when we started to work closely with the police. I remember I have some fellas who was in my section who remain my friends, policemen who remain my friends up to this day.
These patrols, how long did they last? And when the thing, would you say, got back to normal in the military?
Those patrols last from 70s right down to all 82, you know, because even though it was scaled down after 78, we still started to go and do patrols. We even started to do more vehicular patrols. We used to have a combination bush and vehicular patrols. So Tobago was always kind of out of it. Was more Trinidad thing to me. But we had, as again, I said, based on that, we started to also left to Tobago. But the hotspot was Trinidad, especially in northern part of Trinidad. Plenty patrols and another. Unlike 90, it was disturbing, especially the initial stage of this thing, because when you're telling me that I had all my friends out there, you know, then we will meet and we'll lime, and then you're telling me that they had to come down to Texas to annihilate me. I was the person. And that kind of disturbing kind of thing. Some of the fellows who were arrested were released. Some eventually came back and finished the time in the army. At first, they were arrested at random. I remember they say I was driving a Jeep, but as a lucky thing, I was a storeman, Captain Halfide, who was my twice. And he knew he tried to down an accelerator from a brick red line, they must go behind a vehicle that I didn't like it. So when they came, he said, no, he's staying here. I remember after everything was over now, when Brigadier Surratt came down, I was responsible for giving the commanding officer a breakdown on the arms intel from. So I had to go from store to store, check all the books, because of course there were arms listed and things for the fellow to get arrested and all. So it was an easy time. You could not leave camp. First to begin, when the thing happened, the Testimonial can't come out. And then when it was over, they given you a couple of hours just to run home and come back. It wasn't an easy time, very stressful. Of course, they had the men who like alcohol, well, they raided the canteen. During the law, before they came to arrest and when they were thinking about coming to take over Petron and all that thing, we were down there, they were in touch with nobody. Maybe the senior people were in touch with authorities outside, but as another rank there, you just went in the back home, you understand? Or as soldiers, they do no guard because they had to guard the camp. So they have systems in place to make sure the camp is secure.
Thank you very much for going through that with us.
We apologize for the quality of that clip. It's we did try to make it a little louder, and I may have inadvertently distorted it a little bit. But I think we were able to hear what he was saying, although it was a bit scratchy. And his account is a good one because he was among the junior officers that was, being ordered around to do certain things and
I'm sorry, once again, we apologize for that quality. We always try to produce the top quality recordings here on our Dependency, and that was, as Natasha said, a little error in trying to enhance it a little more for you. So, unfortunately, it turned out like that. But coming up now, you're going to hear from retired Staff Sergeant. That was retired Regimental Sergeant Major Gilbert Modest, you just heard from. Now you're going to hear from retired Staff Sergeant Jones. Lou Jones, as we called him back in the day.
Jones.
And Lou Jones
my birthday twin.
Was a young soldier then too. And here's what he experienced. He was right in the middle of it. Let's hear from Lou Jones.
I was in Bravo Company, but attached to training wing for shooting purposes. The morning of 1970, I was on the seafront. That's the morning they declared the state of emergency. And I heard a shot fire. And I said, shot fire. And I just saw Bazzi, the young lieutenant. He was in a camouflage jacket, the first camouflage jacket I see somebody wearing. I heard that he was heading to Wilkeby. When I heard the shot fire, I walked towards the building, which we used to call the offices and the stores. I saw two persons on the ground, one like this, lying down on another one. When I looked under the door, they had this kind of half a door with the spring. I saw these two bodies. One was Warrant Officer Ramnath. He was my company sergeant major. He was holding on Rex LaSalle on the ground, like he was wrestling. And then he kicked a rifle that was next to him, and he said, Jones, take that rifle. And I hear him telling LaSalle, sir, cool it, sir, cool it. I take the rifle, I carry through the drills. It had one round in the chamber and two in the magazine. I was walking towards the store, and I saw the talking and thing, and I looked into the office, the door was open. I saw Shah talking with Rob Allen and Major Spencer. He was a captain at the time, came in, and he was talking with them. By the time I took the rifle to the stores and come back, I heard that they were taking them up to put them under close arrest. When I went back by the office and I looked, I saw Colonel Christopher very emotional, and he was in tears. Then it came out that what really transpired is that they tried to take Colonel Christopher to take command of the company, LaSalle and Shah. During the course of the week prior to that, he was getting a platoon ready. So when they declared the state of emergency, I said when he was preparing to go out to the platoon as they planned. Then when I walked down by the stores, a little while after, I saw Prince, who was a batch, he was in the motor platoon, tell me, come and see this. So I had a binoculars. He had a binoculars too. And looking up across the square up to the van room there by the bunker, I saw a vehicle parked up by the bunker with Nuri, Lion, and another guy we used to call Shmoo, Mahmoud. And they had them with their hands up and they had the bunker door open. So I realized something taking place. What had happened before is that Stanley Miles and Hazel came into the stores and dropped 2 weapons and went up by the bunker. Wutu was the man who would have the keys for the bunker. And they went up there. A little while after, Nuri come down the road, they had the sick parade under the mango tree. And he tell them, get away, and he starts shooting up in the air and everybody starts scampering. Well, it was chaos from there. People started running out by the sea, who diving in the water, who running down in the direction of the officers left on the edge of the sea going to Scotland Bay. In the chaos there, I realized they had released Shah and LaSalle from the cell. During that chaos, I heard the Coast Guard boat was out in front. And I went and I have a look from outside the stores. I saw it pulling and then start firing in the direction of the barn room. It fired a few shots, about 6, and then it stopped. Then a lieutenant they called Gordon, Scringy Gordon, came with a megaphone, stood up on the jetty. He had the megaphone talking to them on the boat. I couldn't hear what he was saying because it was pointing in the direction of the boat. Then I saw him take off his shoes, take off his shirt. He left the megaphone and boots on his shirt right by my feet, and he drove off the jetty and swam towards the boat. They threw life preservers and he held on to it and they climbed up on the boat. And they were talking on the boat. I took the binoculars and I looked towards the bridge of the boat. And I saw Richard Kelshaw moving. Williams was on the boat. They were in white. And I saw somebody in the boat in army uniform. And I knew it wasn't Squinchy Gordon because he gave up. But on the bridge I saw somebody in uniform and his face looked like Colonel Johnson, who was the commanding officer then. And I saw his face on the boat, but I never say anything because I heard they say he was absent and nothing ever really come out until where he was. And whatever they did to get rid of him eventually came out of him being absent from the camp. But I was surprised when I heard they didn't know where he was. But the day that they released Shah and LaSalle, when LaSalle and them asked for a falling, everybody gathered on the roadway, facing the dining hall. And LaSalle came and he spoke. He said, we're going to leave here and go to Camp Up then. And he wanted everybody to get ready and to prepare to move out to Camp Up then. He's telling everybody who was there. When he finished speaking, he said, who don't want to go could leave. The first person to step out was Rock Salandi. Rock Salandi come out. Then a few men came out. The rest they remained with. I went into the dining hall and I hear them talking and then they shouting power. I say, something wrong with this thing. Where does this power come from? After the shouting and the talking and all the different kind of orders that they had from LaSalle, they come in a truck with ammunition. And they start issuing ammunition to everybody. Then they form up a convoy. By that time, a plane came in. I don't know from where, but I saw the little light aeroplane making short turns low and coming up across Petron. And this soldier they call Joe Bacchus fired some rounds at it. After that, it never came back. And after they collect all the ammunition and people start gathering, I see they start coming up in convoy. I went down to the stores and one of my batch, McNeil was his name, came and he knocking on the door. A soldier named Bushell was his duty storeman in the stores lock up. They hear coming out. I heard him say that from since really hear coming out. So they knock on the door and I'm saying, well, Bushell not there. He not answering. And McNeil say, I know Bushell in there. And somebody come with a rifle and cock the rifle and tell me if you open the door, they go shoot the lock. I hear the lock go clack. And Bushell open the stores. They go inside, they take rifles. So I asked one of them, I said, we're only going with all these rifles. One of them replied, those rifles are for the brothers outside. I say, who brothers? They say, like, you don't know what's going on or? They load up the rifle up on the truck. They load GPMG about 50 rifles. They wanted to empty the stores and everything. And ammunition, all of that on this little truck. A small open tray truck. Then I walk around to the front. I hear them saying the plane might come back this time with bomb. I say, to me, I have to leave this place. Who leaving right here, leaving right wherever going on? Well, they form a convoy. And the convoy pack up from the guard room, coming right back on to the MI room. They take off all the covers of the truck, all the covers of the Jeep. And they say they're waiting on the last round to give instructions before they leave. I went up on the last truck. Me, George Simon, who was an athlete, and my batch man. He was the company clerk in Bravo Company. He said they're going to camp out and he want to get out, so we're going out. So we jump up on the truck and we sit down in that truck for about an hour. Then Chekos, a couple named Chekos, he pull up in a Jeep, jump out from the Jeep, and somebody else was driving. And he had men in it, they were fully armed. I remember Mahmoud was sitting timing grenade that they had ducked from the bunker. They had cargo staff, and I hear Chekos saying, he said, imagine me, Chekos, on Trinidad and Tobago television announcing, this is the People's Army. After this thing began, and I thought they were confined to the army. But then they tell him don't leave. He wanted to go in front as an advance party because they find the convoy was staying too long to leave. He said his job is to go and take over television also. When he said that, I started to say, what, I had to get out of this place. Then finally, Lafal pull up in a Jeep and he gets in front of the convoy and he stopped. He stand up, he was on the passenger side of the Jeep, and he said, this is the beginning of a new dawn. Let's go. And they start up all the vehicles and they drive off. I had the last truck and the ambulance behind the truck we on. Arthur was driving that truck. Reach up on the hill, convoy stop. And the front must be near the Coast Guard because we right up on the back, the last truck. I hear they say they have a bus in the road and who could drive bus? Somebody say Arthur was driving the truck I was on. He jump off the truck, Arthur gone down. Next thing I hear the bus can't move. We come off for the truck now. Next thing I see the Coast Guard boat backing, going and still going out. Then it started a fire up on the hill above us. Well, I had to take cover. I didn't want to go near to the truck I was on because that truck was loaded with ammunition. I didn't want to take no chance. I move a little away in the grass. Next thing shots start firing, more shots firing, and then the hill, big gravel and thing coming. Then I hear somebody go, a man getting hooked. And they come up the road, running. One of them had a helmet in the hand. The helmet had a hole in it. And they said Chubups Bailey, like he get hooked. As far as I could think, I believe he was dead already. But they get the ambulance to go, but the shot still firing. Shah came and he used the megaphone, went on the edge overlooking the sea and shouting, hold your fire. A man come with a cargo staff. Shah rightfully tell the man not to fire the boat. He tell them hold the fire, they have a wounded man and they want to pass. The bus that was blocking the road, where Bailey and them was trying to push. And before he got hooked, apparently they take the battery or they pull the wires or the bus couldn't start. So they decided to push it off the road and try to push it on the edge of the cliff so that the Jeep could pass with Bailey. And they drive off and go on. All that time, men put machine gun on the edge of the thing and load up and ready to shoot at the boat. But the boat stopped firing. And then Shah say they had to go and decide what they had to do. See if they could clear the road up front now that they get the Jeep to go through. And they dilly-dally. I say, let me go back and touch on.
Yes.
Of the experience from Mr. Lou Jones, and we're going to be speaking with him in a while. So after this break, when we return, you're going to hear from, this is where things started heating up now, and you're going to get a good account from retired Colonel Salandi, Wendell Salandi.
He was one of the officers who was detained.
Yes,
so
and who refused to join with Chande.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's why he got the nickname Rock, because he stood his ground and he said, I ain't not in this. So you will hear from him, and then you'll hear from the man who stopped it under the command of Commander Bloom back then. That is retired Rear Admiral Kelel.
He was the one who was on the Coast Guard vessel firing at the hill to stop the convoy.
Yes, and the man who did all the shooting recently passed away too. Well,
Yes.
a couple of years ago,
Donald Mohammed.
Retired Donald Mohammed, Lieutenant Commander. So you're going to hear from him, and then you're going to hear from Rafiq Shah. And then we have a nice little lineup, a parade, for you to see all the people who contributed in it. Because we're not going to do 13 parts again like we did the last 11 parts again like we did the last time. This was supposed to be part 1, maybe part 2. It turned out to be 11 parts.
Yep.
And people were enjoying it, the history, and the first time being told from the point of the military, because, anytime you hear 1970, you always think about the Black Power Revolution, and you'll hear from Cambon, and you're going to hear from all those other players during that time. But this time, we also have done interviews with the freedom fighters, a couple of them. And we were waiting to get from another lady who was part of it, but she hasn't contacted us since. But we still have that. Anytime we, feel it's right and it's apt, we'll play that for you. So let's go to a break. And those of you just joining us, you're listening to a recap of 1970. I'm sure you learned a lot from what you heard so far. I still am hoping that they could name that place there, that corner.
Yes.
Where all that shooting took place by Colonel Luke.
After Bailey.
Luke Bailey way.
Luke. Yes.
Yeah, Luke and Bailey, because Bailey got shot there.
Yes.
And Luke family experienced a horrendous time from that. Imagine they were right in the line of fire from Coast Guard. All the shells were dropping below their house. If you all know how that place was configured,
and
or is configured.
Most of them were children at the time, obviously,
Yes.
and their father was unfortunately not around.
Not with them.
So it was a panic.
Yeah,
and they thought of returning to the house where some of these soldiers apparently had ransacked their house, and they went back, and it was really, we really, we advocated then, and I think we still feel that family is owed some kind of commensuration or compensation.
Or even just acknowledgement.
Or acknowledgement of the trauma that they suffered.
They suffered severe PTSD.
Yep.
And that corner right there, just the top of the hill before you turn right to go Tetron, I think there should be a street sign erected there called the Luke Bailey Way. I'm hoping that some dispensation of the Defense Force would see into it and look into it and do it.
Yep.
Because we have on Marley Street a street named after a soldier. How many people you all know that?
Know who it is.
And we don't even know who the person is, but the U.S. Embassy was able to get that to happen here. So then, if this is an event that is, I know we like to bury our past. I know we don't like to relive it. I know that. But you know what? Thank God these men were able to do that, because we never had the military account from these individuals we spoke about.
Yep.
From them, so you're going to hear from them this morning. So thank you very much for staying with us. Those of you on Facebook and YouTube, remember, you're new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe to us and help us to grow this channel, okay? Let's go to a break. And in that break, remember there was a launch of a product this week from the tobacco company, the vape.
Yep.
Well, young people, I'm sorry to say, but I know the horse has already bolted where that is concerned. But those of you who have not tried it before, please don't. Okay? Let's go to the break. We'll be back.
When kids are looking to purchase these jewels or these vaping products, if they're 18, they could go to local retail stores, they could go to gas stations, they could go to vape shops. If they're not 18, now they're limited to going to a lot of online places. They ask if you're 18, you click yes, and as long as you have a credit card, you can purchase these. You can purchase from other kids, you can purchase from online auction sites like eBay. It is easy to get these devices. Parents, remember, together we can make a difference.
Hola, my name is Elena. Well, it's actually not my real name. You don't really care, do you? All you care about is once you pay your money to my boss that I look pretty, smell nice, smile for you, and let you have good time. Enjoying yourself and doing to me whatever you want to do for the money you paid. What you don't see or know is that I don't get any part of the money you paid. My boss takes all of it. I am forced to work, taking as many clients as my boss tells me to. I am beaten, made to take drugs, and I cannot leave this kind of work on my own. I am a victim of human trafficking. Please, por favor, help me.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays, at 10 a.m., and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
All right, thank you for staying with us. So without further delay, and Mike Bazi was in Canada on course at the time, and deceased Major General Ralph Brown was asked to retrieve him and bring him to Trinidad when he was coming.
Yes, and he was charged, yes.
He was charged, yes, but he was
his name
brought
is
back.
also spelled B-A-Z-I-E.
Right, and he was not at Sandhurst. He was at, I think, Camp Gordon or somewhere in
Canada
on course at the time. But he wrote a letter, like condoning what Shandy did, and they decide, oh, you part of this too. I think Special Branch intercepted the letter, and the rest is history, as to say. All right, so let's go to Wendell Salandi now to hear, as a sergeant back then, what he experienced in 1970.
But as Julian Spencer to draw up a plan to attack and take back Petro.
Short man, we going to Salandi. That's G. Going to Wendell Salandi. We leaving Rafik Shah for last.
My number is 0044, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Salandi. I'm a former member of the West India Regiment. I joined on the 22nd of June 1959. I spent 3 years in Jamaica, had the opportunity to be involved in some combat where the West India Regiment and the Royal Hampshire Regiment had to deal with the disturbance of one Reverend Henry and some men who tried to overthrow the government of Jamaica in 1960.
With respect to 1970, could you tell us about what you experienced on that morning in Tetron Barracks?
In 1970, I was a staff sergeant. I was the married quarters accommodation sergeant attached to the quartermaster stores. The person responsible for all married quarters and government quarters for soldiers. I normally inspect them and have a team that goes around and check them and things like that. On the morning of the 21st of April, I did a battalion falling where we were addressed by Colonel Christopher, then Major, who was the second in command of the regiment. After he had completed his address, I left, went down to the stores, armory, collect my rifle, and head to the sergeant's mess. 8:45 to be exact. I heard some shots being fired from the area of the bunker and the quartermaster stores. So I tried to get out of the mess to see what was happening. And then shots were being fired at the sergeant's mess. So I crawled back into the sergeant's mess and I went into the washroom where I met Warrant Officer Charles sitting on the base of one of the bathrooms. And I went into the bathroom and stand up. After that, I heard more shots again. I went back to the louvers and looked up to the area and I saw 2 persons standing there in the gabardine. So I knew it had to be some officers. And when I looked properly, I recognized it was Sergeant Major French, the RSM, and Payne, RQMS Payne. And they had both hands up in the air and there were soldiers behind them with weapons. So I recognize this is a serious business. And I'm seeing vehicles driving up and down from the bunker to the gas station. So it was kind of melee at that time. So I went back to the mess and I heard a number of soldiers came to the mess. See, they come for the sergeant and the sergeant mess and all this kind. As I said, I was in the washroom, so I couldn't see what was happening outside here. But I'm hearing the noise. Then 2 soldiers came into the bathroom. They told Mr. Charles, get up, come, you come. Then I heard somebody said to him, anyone else in there? He said, no. He said, fire 1 or 2 shots and make sure they come out. I stood the ground because where I was standing, I could have seen the mirror and I could have seen all the actions they're doing. So the guy said he shot, there wasn't anyone there, and he walked out. And the next thing I heard again is the sergeants going to the corridor and being escorted down to the guard room. After I realized they were locked up in the bar, and eventually they came out under pressure and they were escorted to the guard room. A few minutes after, I saw a lot of vehicles driving up and down, forming a convoy right in front of the guard room, going back to the medical room. I say, but this thing getting serious. Every time I look, I see it getting more serious. Then I saw the vehicles left. I made out one of the drivers were Mahmoud. They left and they went up, leaving Tetro. Then I heard some heavy gunfire. And then I saw people coming back down to Tetro. They're running, coming back down to Tetro. I said, what the hell of a thing is this?
Then I saw a small airplane, and I saw the shooting at the plane. I actually saw that. They were shooting at the plane. Then a lot of them came into the sergeant's mess. There were a lot of civilian workers. I remember one, Mr. Bostic, who used to work at the transport department, came into the mess. And we were discussing, talking what's happening and things like that. In the afternoon, approximately 1700 hours, I heard a battalion falling low. I responded to that falling outside the medical room. They had approximately 100 and something to 200 men. Lassell and Shah were present. And Lassell said, I remember him saying quite clearly, all who want to go and help black brothers in Port Spain, fall in on his right, and who against them, fall in on the left. He repeated a second time. I was leaning on a post and I moved forward. I said, sir, I am not with you all. I am not in this thing. I heard at the time a machine gun cocked. And I looked and I saw who cocked the gun too. And I walked away, and then Mr. Shah was standing there, and he said, so Rock, you're not with us. I said, no. He said, why? I said, because if we're moving as a regiment, we must have orders, normal ground situation, mission execution. People must be able to go back and brief the troopers, and we don't move in this fashion. I told him so. So I'm not with you. There was one soldier who took the names of everybody who on that side and that. But there was one soldier by the name of John P. He eventually tried to cross on my side and moving through the crowd slowly. And eventually he came across on my side. That's one thing I remember. So that was so far for the 21st. After that, while I was walking all around the place, I was one man in Tetra bar, had my beret properly fixed. Not the wrong side, properly fixed my beret on my head. A number of senior people had the berets turned around. I saw that. The black part of the beret on the outside and the green part on the inside. I had my beret with my star on my head throughout. But that didn't worry me. I joined the army to be a soldier. I signed on the dotted line to die for the right of what I believe in. And that's how I looked at it. So I was able to walk around the camp. I recall the afternoon, I decided to go down to the dining hall to get something to eat. And a soldier said, you can't get no bread in here, you know. So I called a guy named Tamba Tom. His name was Thomas. I said, Tom, can I get a bread? I want to sergeants in the mess still who are around. I haven't locked them up as yet. Tom said, listen, soldier, if I tell you to take the bread up for the staff sergeant, you better give the sergeant the bread. And the soldier gave me about 4 bread, and I walked up back to the sergeant's mess. The other sergeant who were Ramnath, Applewhite, and King, they were in the mess. Staff Sergeant Williams, I remember him too. But most of the other guys were locked up. On the Wednesday morning, I got up and I went to the guard room. I saw soldiers guarding officers and sergeants locked up in the guard room. So I went to them and I said, I wanted to speak to Hazel and Bentley. So they said, listen now, anyhow, go ahead. And I went, I spoke with Bentley and I spoke with Hazel and I went back to the sergeant's mess. But I must mention that it was tension in Tetra. People were scared, some people were okay, but the guys like Norrie, Pakistan, these guys were operating as normal. I think it's on Thursday morning or Wednesday evening, I looked out at the sea and I saw some battleships there facing Tetra barracks. I remember that quite well. I saw it. At this time, I told Apple, listen now, I get out of here, you know, because when you hear those people start to fire, you know, everybody getting killed in this place, you know. But it seemed as though in the mess, there was a story. So the person went and like told Mr. Shah, and then they come and they say, I hear you want to get away and you want to this and that, and they decided to arrest me tonight. He came and he took me and he took the other sergeants and them, and then they went and they took the guys from the guard room. That's his name, Johnson, and all the sergeants, and they marched just down to the training wing back room. That's the one next to the dining hall. They had blocked it right around with lockers and sealed it off and things like that, and they put us in there. So we spent a few days there. Well, I mean, I enjoyed it. Playing cards right through, but they were not harassing us. But they said, if we tried to escape, they're going to shoot us. But nobody is trying to escape. They don't lock up inside there already. Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, we were released. We were to report to the Combined Services Officers Mess. That's where Brigadier Ferret and all his team, they were staying there. And when I reached there, the first thing Brigadier Ferret told me, say, Salandi, I would like you to go and take over the stores from Major Luke at the time. I went there, I took over all the ammunition and everything, and I was controlling that. I had up with me Stuart and Applewhite. 3 of us manned up thing there for a period of time. Till I recall one day, Bowers came there and he said, Salos, give me some ammunition. I said, partner, you can't get ammunition. So here, you have to sign for it. I said, sign here. So he signed, he take about 20 rounds of ammunition. And he went across the Brigadier said and said, you have a good man there.
No, you went to trial as a witness.
I sat on every court martial with Dan Juma, Mills O'Dewey, who was the judge advocate, and all these people. And the day they came to Tetro, because you had to verify where you say you saw certain things. And I recall when I told them where I was, when I saw what was taking place, they went down into the drain. And then Danjuma said, oh yes, he's consistent.
They were eventually freed of all charges.
Yes, there was some charge of condonation or something, and they wanted.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I was cool, because I am a soldier. Every time I see a man do something, I write it down on a piece of paper, And then I went and gave my evidence based on that. This is fact. Every person I caught, I had to go and touch them in court. A lot of soldiers say, when we come from here, we're going to kill the grass on your lawn and all you. And I wasn't worried about that. Up to now, they'll come back and kill the grass on my lawn. Because I know I was speaking the truth. So that was my role really in the thing, That was my role in 1970. And I always say, if it happens again, I'll do the same thing.
Now, do you think that these events of 1970 should be recorded?
I personally believe so, and I thought what you are doing there, if everybody speak the truth of the part they played, one can put it in an order of sequence, and you will tell the story, what transpired. And that would be very good. I will support that 100%, because that's history, That is history of Trinidad and Tobago.
Lieutenant Colonel retired Wendell Salandi, Rock Salandi as he's also fondly called, and his role on the base at Tetron when the mutiny was launched.
Yeah, true died in the World Soldier, started with West India Regiment. So, folks, coming up, you're going to hear from the man who who changed everybody's mind with orders from his commander, Bloom. And, and we have a parade of sorts, 9 minutes long actually, but while we take your calls, we can show that of people who took part in this series. All the people who gave evidence, who gave their testimony, on what happened in 1970, what they experienced. And then we're going to have a chat with Lou, and once we don't run out of time, we call Mr. Modest. And you know there was an incident that happened in Tobago where Coast Guard boarded a vessel. Well, I want you to call Mr. Sandy, who's listening from Tobago this morning, and tell him we have something to show him, right? Before we go, right? Tell him the guy who was quarreling when the Coast Guard and the police boarded his boat, the Marine Police and the Coast Guard. I think two of them was from Coast Guard. I can't remember. But just let Sandy know we have something to show him this morning before we wrap up here on Independency. Those of you, I'll tell you about the guy. You keep hearing about this aircraft. Well, I'll tell you who flew the aircraft and where he is today. Okay. If he's still alive, that is. All right, so let's go to Rear Admiral.
The lone Coast Guard representative this morning. Not that we haven't interviewed other members of the Coast Guard, but this... his account, obviously, is of his role in attempting to stop the convoy. Of course, he had other duties, but his contribution this morning is going to focus on what took place on HMS Trinity, I believe it was.
So, Coast Guard saved the day. And, of course, in those pictures, you would see the pictures of the boat and all that was mentioned during this series. Correct. All right, so let's go to retired Rear Admiral Kelel and his account of stopping the convoy from leaving Tetron Barracks on the 21st of April, 1970.
My number is 506. The numbers in the Coast Guard were different to the Army. They started at 500. 1963, the 9th of September. So I was the 5th officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard and the 1st officer cadet. All the rest were short service officers and Royal Naval people that were brought. I had a kind of normal career, except I spent a lot of time as the ADC to the Governor General as a very junior officer. And so I worked with Sir Solomon Hochard, and that is where I learned Trinidad, and like going to a university, who was who, and ministers, that kind of stuff. And then I was returned to duty in Stowellsby. And when I returned there, I became the first lieutenant of the HMTS Trinity, which was one of the Vosper fast patrol boats we had acquired. A significant affair occurred during 1970, which I will mention because it puts a lot of things in perspective for me. And that is, there was a pirate operating in the Gulf of Paria. And it went on for months and months and months. And the heat and the public came up to the Coast Guard saying, what are you all doing about it? This man was shooting fishermen, stealing their engines, robbing nets. He was a terror in the Gulf of Paria. And the pressure mounted on the Coast Guard to do something. But we couldn't find this man. We looked everywhere. We patrolled. We never found him. And then one evening, a fishing boat arrived at Stobles Bay. And the fisherman said, the pirate in Pelican Island, which is one of the 5 islands. And the commanding officer, Commander Bloom, said to me, take a little Boston whaler, a little dinghy boat with 2 men and go up there and just check it out. And I drew weapons and we went up, 3 of us. When we arrived at Pelican Island, there were 2 men in a boat and 1 man was up on the islands with a pair of binoculars, observing a set of Venezuelan traders going back to Korea. And just from the whole appearance, I knew that was the pirate. He was about to attack that set of traders and steal all their goods. And the 2 men were waiting in the boat. So I told the men in the boat to stop. They wouldn't stop because they didn't understand English. And they just start up the engine and take off. But I knew he was there. So I put my attention there. I fired at them, but no heroes. I didn't hit nobody. A boat bouncing in the ocean, you can't hit nobody with a gun, especially a submachine gun. Anyway, I went up on the island, and while I was climbing up the island, I came under fire. And this man was shooting at us into the boat and in the sea. It's the first time any Defense Force officer came under live fire. And it was a significant moment for me because I experienced this live fire coming up. In effect, I failed. We ran out of ammunition and the man was still there with his weapons and the boat was there and the boat turned to come back to pick him up. I had 2 more SLR rounds, which the sailor had. I took away his weapon and I fired at the boat and both went off. And the boat went back to Venezuela and left him there. But we had lost because those 2 rounds were the last and he was coming for us. So I had a flare and I fired off a flare and people drinking in the yacht club bar saw the flare and called Commander Bloom. And the moment they called him, he knew. And it was like a movie. The whole Coast Guard came out of the sunset and the man was captured and whatnot. But the reason it's significant is the fact that I was under fire. And that put my head in a certain space because I didn't know what was coming next. So there we are. That brings us to April the 21st morning when the country was put on a state of emergency and the Coast Guard officers were told to be there at 4 o'clock. I reported at 4. I have to tell you, I've never been so scared in all my life. We knew what was going on from what we had been seeing and hearing, and I was saying to myself, not even the whole army and us and the police could stop what was going on. And so I was very, very scared. The first job I had was to go to a classroom with 1 sailor, and the police had brought all the leaders of the Black Power movement, and they were put in a classroom. And I was told I was in charge of them to keep them there and quiet. And I sat in the classroom with them for about an hour. And as time went on, they became more and more militant and frightening. They started to tell me about the trees that I would be hung on in Woodford Square and what they would do to my family and what people like me deserve. And then one of the more militant got up and he said, little boy, give me the gun. And I have to confess, I was frozen. I had with me a young recruit who had just finished training. And as the man approached to pick up my gun, he took the rifle and the bayonet and stuck it under the man's chin. And he said, if you sneeze, I'll blow your head off. He was so frightened that you could hear the magazine rattling in the rifle. But that incident made everybody sit down and not a word was said after that because they realized we were serious. They didn't know I was scared, but they knew that that young sailor was so frightened he would shoot anybody. So that is how my day started, in a very frightening way. A little later on, a car drives into Stobles Bay and then Captain Spencer jumped out of his little sports car and ran. We were in the yard in Stobles Bay and he said, they're coming. We have a mutiny in Tetra. He was bleeding from his hand where Rafiq Shah tried to shoot him and he held the SLR with his hand and pushed it up and the flash guard burned all the inside of his fingers. So his right hand was raw and he had driven over the hill and arrived in Stobles Bay. He said they were coming and Lieutenant Commander Mervyn Williams was the captain of the Trinity and I was his first lieutenant. And he turned to me and he said, Kelel, put your ship at action stations, we're going to sea. So I ran back to the ship. We put the ship at action stations, and he came running down the jetty, jumped on board, and we went round to Tetron. While we were in Tetron Bay, he told me to open fire. And I asked him what target, and he said the bunkers are somewhere up in the back there. Fired the bunkers, because we had heard that they were trying to open the bunkers to get ammunition out. So I opened fire with the Bofors 4060 weapon, which looks insignificant, but it's an anti-aircraft weapon and it fires 120 rounds a minute, 40mm round. They were fitted with what is called a graze nose fuse because it was anti-aircraft, which meant it would hit the thin skin of an airplane. That would activate the fuse, and when it got inside the plane, shrapnel would fly in the plane and mash it up. So we were flying over Tetron Bay, up to where the bunker was, trying to create a feeling we in charge here now, stop the mutiny. It didn't work. All that happened was there was mass confusion and soldiers started to run everywhere. And then he said, all right, ceasefire, this is not working. A crop duster. The pilot, who was already airborne, heard on the radio there was something going on in Tetron. And he flew that crop duster about 20 feet above the hillside going along to see what was going on. And the entire set of troops on the hillside opened fire. And it was only by his skill as a pilot that he came out with the airplane riddled with bullet holes and went back the way he came. But when we saw that on the ship, we say, Saul, you're still bad? We're going to show you what bad. And we let loose with the Beaufort on the hillside. And this time, it was not me. They had Captain Bloom and Mervyn Williams, so I wasn't scared. Boy, did we fire that gun. We fired it so much that we had to pick buckets of water from the sea to cool the barrel. It was so hot. And the trees were just flying out the ground. We nicknamed the gun after that and called it the lawnmower. And an officer swam out from Tetron Bay to the ship and spoke to him. While that was happening, a boatload of sergeants trying to get out of there came out, and the boat capsized right alongside the ship, and a couple of them were drowned. Coast Guard men dived overboard and saved these two sergeants, and we pulled them up on board. We came right back to Stoble's Bay, and as a result, I think, of what the officer told Mervyn Williams, he just disappeared. We know now in hindsight that he went up the hill to his house where he was living and went down to Tetron. At the time, our Coast Guard aircraft was alerted way early in the morning and was circling on top Tetron Bay watching, and he reported to our headquarters there was a convoy and that the convoy was forming up and about to leave. This information came to our ops room and was told to Commander Bloom, who sent for the captain of the Trinity. But of course, he was nowhere to be found. And then the order came down to me, you're the first lieutenant. So I left the ship and I went to Commander Bloom. And I said, yes, sir, what would you like? And I'm going to use his words. He said, Rich, I want you to take that ship to sea and stop the army convoy.
Let's go to a break, folks. We'll be right back. Short man, let's go to a break. And you just listen to Commander Kelel's account, but I think we're having some technical difficulty. And of those of you on Facebook, we appreciate you on the YouTube channel. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
We have a vaping problem in Williamson County. Not only is it in our school district, it's throughout this nation. It's affecting our youth. It's easy to get a hold of. It's not hard to buy. They're everywhere. We know kids don't do anything in moderation. They could take this pod, smoke the entire pod in 15 minutes, which would be equivalent to smoking an entire pack of cigarettes. Can you imagine what that does to your body? Parents, remember, together we can make a difference.
The sex trafficking thing is a serious thing in a way.
Sex trafficking?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was only human trafficking it have.
But what do you mean?
No serious thing, boy. Where you get that from? I don't know about human trafficking, me not about sex trafficking.
So how can you spot and identify perpetrators and children who are victims of trafficking? Many victims who are children do not look like under 18 years old. Child victims often move escorted around alone or in small groups. They also live in shared and even packed rooms and have very little clothing and belongings. Child victims are often seen with adults who are not their parents, their relatives, or their caregivers. Migrant children are often unaccompanied and separated from their parents. Child victims are often engaged in work that is not suitable for children. They are often deprived of their freedom to go to school, to play, and to enjoy being a child. Perpetrators have unexplained sources of income and possessions. They are businessmen and businesswomen running legitimate and illegitimate businesses. Perpetrators may appear to be the victim's friend, boyfriend, close relative, or employer.
We are the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security, Trinidad and Tobago, safeguarding human life.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Yeah, folks, thanks very much for thanks very much for your patience. We having those of you experiencing any problem on Facebook, please remember we have a YouTube channel, EYE on Dependency, on YouTube, so you could join us there and hear the end of this journey that Rear Admiral Kelel was relating to you. But I hope we were able to educate some of you this morning on the events of 1970. Those of you who were not present when we did the series, that series, where we did 11 parts. But just from the same book that I started with, suddenly the sound of a small aircraft could be heard approaching above the recreation area. Every rebel soldier responded, thinking that Tetron was about to be attacked. Just then, as the small plane came into view over Tetron barracks, a couple of rebel outposts in and around the camp opened fire, hitting the plane several times. It was something of a miracle that neither the pilot nor the engine was hit. The plane then turned and headed over the ocean and took off in an easterly direction. An intelligence update a few days later noted that the pilot, a foreigner working part-time with Caroni as a crop duster, had heard on his wireless radio about the unrest at Tetron Barracks. Being curious and wishing to investigate for himself, he headed west in his small crop duster plane and found himself over Tetron Barracks. After having his small plane riddled with machine gun bullets and narrowly escaping with his life, the pilot, now very shaken and nervous, flew directly to Piaco Airport and requested permission to land. There he left the aircraft and traveled to his apartment in Central in a taxi. A few days later, he was back at Piaco Airport, only this time to board a flight back to his homeland in Europe. He never to be heard from again. So that's the latest on what happened to this pilot. As I said, he was European, a crop duster working here, and then boom, he just heard of the insurrection and of the attempted, mutiny, and he decided to go investigate for himself. And unfortunately, he never showed up again after that experience. Of course, not being a not being a World War II or I pilot, you're going to end up shots fired at you. Of course, it will shake you up. And he decided, that's it for me and Trinidad and Tobago, I'm gone. So we never heard from him again, unfortunately. And so are we ready with Shortman? And those of you, again, thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for your support. Courtesy, this is a national security agency, so I'm pleased to let you know that, courtesy the Ministry of National Security and Counter Trafficking Unit, you had a chance to take a walk down memory lane, especially as like I indicated, you young soldiers who, sailors who may not appreciate with the shoulders that you stand on now. All right, Shoban, let's just go to I, and let's do that parade. So you can give Lou a call. Shoban, go to I in a minute. I know people tell us to do something. Just have retired. He too took part in the series. Anthony Franklin, as I said, retired Commodore, and Carlton Ramnath. And of course, we have
So they made the regiment fall, almost to disgrace. They tried to make the army look small, all over the place, because they wanted to rule. They thought the boys were easy to fool. That was trouble at Tobago, Lord. But hear what I say, there are brave soldiers in the regiment, men of integrity in the regiment. We know there was a mutiny, not these boys you must agree. And they joined the mutiny, could never stop the army. Think again your policy, to them we owe all liberty. We should be a monument for the heroes of the regiment.
Thank them for doing so. Thank them for spending the time with us. This was a long journey. Retired Captain Sergeant, retired Lieutenant Moore, and Kenneth Hutchins.
In April 1970, they had no cannon, they had no gun, they refused to join the mutiny. Why, you see how they had to run through snake-infested jungle and into the sea, all the way to Scotland Bay, Monos and Gaspery. There are great sportsmen in the regiment.
Of course, retired Major General.
There are national heroes in the regiment. We know there was a mutiny, not these boys, you must agree. And they joined the mutiny, could never stop the army. Think again your policy, to them we owe all liberty. We should build a monument for the heroes of the regiment.
So these are the old men, young soldiers now, and sailors, if you're watching on air guard, personnel, these are the soldiers who stand. And this is the Luke family who fought in that barrage of gunfire.
Let them march noble and proud. Let the banners fly, sing their praise, sing it out loud. Heroes never die, it will be written in history. When all is said and done, they won a great victory, but they never killed anyone. There are brave soldiers in the regiment. This nation is really proud of the regiment.
Civilians too as well.
We know there was a mutiny, not these boys who must agree. find the mutiny. Room could never stop the army. Think again hypocrisy. To them we owe our liberty. There should be a monument for the heroes of the regiment.
Right, and this is Bailey. This is what Bailey looked like, and the helmet that he wore when he shell. Imagine that helmet could even stop the shrapnel from that ammunition from the so that's what Bailey. This is his regimental ID card. What it looked like. It was 3159.
So they make the regiment fall almost to disgrace.
And his family. That's his family right there. Bailey's father too was a police officer. He passed away recently as well. He was the person who taught a lot of military personnel to ride horse. Because he worked at the mountain barracks. So that's Bailey. And if you're just joining us and you missed the beginning, you can, go back as usual. As soon as we're done, you can go back to Lou Jones. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, my friend.
Lou Jones, thank you very much for joining us, and we played your comment, your testimony, and it was nice to hear you once again. How you feel after today being the anniversary of this day, of the event of 1970?
Talking to you on thing, but I feel the same, no different feeling. It was a good experience as it went.
Right.
I always think I learned from it.
Yeah, well, I know, and we want to thank you for your service. We're not going to keep you long because we know you're not here, you're out of the country and so on. And but how is retirement going so far?
Well, right now it's going fine because I retired from working up here too. Up here doing medical checkups and all of that. I have an eye surgery scheduled for this Wednesday, the 24th.
I wonder. Okay.
On my left eye to do cataract removal. I've already done my right eye a couple of years ago.
Right.
Stopped wearing glasses since then.
Hold on 1 second. So on your screen now, who you're seeing is Julian Spencer and that famous sports car, the MG Midget, and
the red midget.
Yeah, his son today is head of the acting head of the SSA. That's Anthony Philip Spencer, Brigadier General. So they made their contribution. His father made his contribution, and he's now making his, and he continues to do so. Well, Lou, we again, from Natasha and I and the folks of Trinidad and Tobago, we want to say thank you for your service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago as a soldier in the regiment.
You're welcome, pleasure.
All right, so you keep good and stay strong.
I wish you all the best.
All right, Lou. Take care, man.
Okay,
right, that was
friend,
Lou Jones. So let's say from Barbell, and then we open the lines and take some calls, Mr. Modest. So yes, folks. So Natasha, thank you very much for once again putting this together, and Mr. Vidal, of course, we will never forget the contribution that your father made to the Volunteer Defense Force. This is the Colon Bay, Trinity, and the Coast Guard vessels that were used during that time as well. Keep sending your messages, and again, this is the Bofa 50mm gun that was used back then. And that's one of the picture of it is now. You can find that now at the Military Museum in Chaguaramas. And remember, if you're just joining us, you can go back to our Facebook page or YouTube channel, and beside Commander Kelel, who was Trinidad, right, with the other of the racing of his racing TTF. Oh yeah, it had a lot of them. Just hold on, Sir Major.
When we, before we gained our independence, so yes, there were a lot of Europeans in the military when it started.
Shortman, could you go back to that picture? Let them see who that last picture was. That's the man who fired the Boffer and who remained an unsung hero to this day till he died. He never wanted people to... It's really straight. No, the last picture with Commander Mohammed. Oh, right, this one, Shortman. Yes. No, this is the guy who did the firing. That's the guy in the middle there with the coat slung on his left arm. That's the guy. And he lieutenant commander, he retired as a lieutenant commander, and he did a pretty good job under the instructions, but nobody ever met him. He never did an interview about it. He just went home without much fanfare. Sir Major, morning, and thank you very much for taking the call, sir.
Morning.
Right. So, Sir Major, we're not going to keep you. We just want to say it's the anniversary today, 21st April, and I'm sure your mind would go back to that day at this time, if not no any other time.
Well, it was about this time things was hot down there.
Yes.
Yeah, plenty action, man. Unfortunately, I don't have much people I could call, to recount events of this day.
Right. So most of them have left us now, right?
Huh?
Most of them have left us. I mean, I know Colonel Salandi is still around.
Yes.
Yeah.
About them mark out already.
Yeah, boy. Plenty of them mark out already. Yeah,
But-
said. But
But
Sir
you
Major,
what you find normally happens sometimes, we call those, the few that remain, call all that wish happy anniversary.
yes. Yes. All right, Sir Major. Well, thank you very much for
Yes, man.
for being around with us still.
Yes, and it's good for all you to remind the people after us about the people who went before them.
Yes. Yes, it's our pleasure in doing so. And thank you
That's
very much for
important.
your service. Thank you.
Yes, man. Thanks.
Okay, Sir Major, take care.
I'll take care then.
All right. Right, so that was Mr. Modest, who you heard from a while ago, and then you heard from Lou Jones. So we take a couple calls, Gary, before we wrap up. At 622-3937. Remember, today is the anniversary, folks. And yes, to answer the question, I was looking for the, she was asking if somebody asked about the white composition of white men who made up part of the West India Regiment, Gary.
I was also saying that the militaries in the colonies or former colonies as we were or as we became were mostly staffed with Europeans from our colonial master. So yes, there were a lot at the introduction or the start of many of the militaries in the Caribbean. Not only were they staffed by members of the military from England, but also from other neighboring Caribbean islands. As we have heard, there were people from Grenada, from Jamaica as well, who were the founding members of our military.
Jamaica, again, they tried to form a West India regiment, but then it didn't work out, and for various reasons, but that was it, Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Kat and Natasha. Kat, I don't remember, I was the first year with the Jedi Supremacy Protection in Sergeant Mess, Sanky Jama.
Hey, how you doing there?
Remember me?
Yes. Thank you very much.
I started playing music there in 1971. I played there for 25 years. Okay?
All right. Thank you, my dear. Thank you so much. No, we had promised to do some. Mr. Sandy is looking on. Let's go to video J, Shortman, quickly. Or do you remember this event? For those of you on Facebook and YouTube just joining us, do you remember this when this happened? So let's go with this one first. Now, what you're looking at here is a Coast Guard boarding a vessel in Miami, right? But we just want to show Mr. Sandy something. Give me some audio, please. See, Coast Guard boarding the vessel, and they go in the vessel. They're being greeted by the crew, and now this is how it's supposed to look like, Mr. Sandy. So the Coast Guard comes on board, have a chat with the captain, and everybody's cordial because the Coast Guard do what the Coast Guard or the Marine Police do what the Marine Police getting paid to do, which is they can board any vessel at any time once it's in their jurisdiction, right? So there you have it. So they board the vessel and they're having a chat with the owner of the vessel. Everybody's walking around and greeting the sailors, thanking them for their service, I guess, and come back to the audio. Right, so this is what it looks like with people who understand the role of the Marine or servants of the sea, I should say. Right, this is what it looks like when they want to carry out their duty. As I said, they identify themselves. They're in a Coast Guard boat. They're wearing Coast Guard uniform, and they are welcomed on board. They might even offer them a drink. Of course, they would refuse, and they have a chat. So there's him chatting with the captain. All right, let's go to video K. Meanwhile, in our country, this is what happens when our Coast Guard boards a vessel. Give me the audio with this one.
So guys, this is what happens when we're doing tourism and Coast Guard come on the boat with all the big guns. People cry. You understand? People cry. So you're going to be on Facebook tonight. Yeah, this is what's going on. This is Mr. Sandy. We don't know his next name, you know, but this is what is going on here. Yes. This is what is going on here. Can I have a bus, please?
I see Mr. Sandy. Mr. Sandy actually is a sailor, right? Yeah. But the owner of this vessel, anybody remember the name of this vessel? And the owner of this vessel, but let's listen to the conversation.
So Mr. Sandy, you give me one name. Sandy, you give me one name. What's your name? Sandy what? Because on my boat you could be a pirate. What's your name? You could be a pirate in Coast Guard uniform because you don't even have a Coast Guard badge on you. Yes, Mr. Sandy? Oh, he's not giving us his name. This is what is going on in Tobago. In Tobago, they can board your boat and do what they want, and they're not giving you their name.
So, my owner, my friend, Tobagonian friend, in future, when the Coast Guard asks to board your vessel, just shut up and welcome them on board. Okay? And if you're not doing anything illegal, then you have nothing to worry about. If you're not carrying anything illegal, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. But you see the difference. What happened with what we just showed you before and how you carried on afterwards is really unfortunate.
And the incident he tried to blow up, the Coast Guard officer was kneeling down, speaking to the child who had burst into tears. Of course, we don't know why she was crying, but in the event that it was because of the fact that they boarded the vessel, he was trying to comfort her and he was talking to her. So that is exactly what he should be doing.
And if he was a pirate, sir, you would have known that before he even boarded the vessel.
I mean, that's just idiocy.
Please, thank the people for their service rather than try to embarrass them. And tourists understand that. Real people who understand marine, the work of marine sailors and soldiers and police officers and all of that, they understand. So please, the next time, welcome them aboard and don't feel that it's an affront to you and your passengers. It's all for your benefit and safety.
It's for your safety, correct.
Right. And if he was a pirate, you would have known that. Let's go back. Let's take one more. Gary, one more call. Hello, good morning.
Morning, Dad.
Morning.
Morning.
I can't get tired of that story. You know. That story you played on yesterday, the last time, just get it out of the way. But boy, every time you play it, it's so intriguing then, you know. You listen because this time you bring it in different, everybody version, you know.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember where Barclays was in on Charlotte Street. That's Penny Bank.
Yeah, that's where Barclays are.
That's where Barclays was. And
Yeah.
it still had the Barclays sign on it. I
I
telling
don't
my husband that he's telling me no.
Okay.
Okay then, thanks.
Well, you know, hello? Hello?
Good morning, Gata Natasha.
Morning.
Very good show. The Penny Bank was the cooperative bank.
Okay.
The British Western Army was formed in anticipation of the Federation, which failed, so they were no more. And that Beaver and Tobago is a typical example of wrong and strong. The Coast Guard have the right to go on board any craft in our waters.
Thank you very much.
You brought back memories of 1970. Good show as usual.
Yeah, man.
Continue what you are doing and safe to home, God. Enough respect.
All right, thanks a lot. So, for those of you who didn't hear the Rafik Shah and the end of Natasha, we're going to get posted so that you can still go back to our page and hear Rafik Shah's account and
all of the other members of the the former members of the military regiment and Coast Guard and civilians. We will post all of those in the coming days and weeks on our YouTube channel. We do have a channel already dedicated to the 1990 series that we did, so we will upload the 1970 videos as well.
So, Alison, you could just go back there and hear Rafik Shah's, for those of you who never heard Rafik Shah's contribution to this. So, thank you once again, folks, for another interesting journey. Courtesy Ministry of National Security, Counter Trafficking Unit, and we say thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week. Major news up next with Mr. Daly now.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.